And we welcome today Senator Dayna Polehanki, who serves in the Michigan Senate. And we are pleased to have her join us. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us, Senator Polehanki.
Thank you for having me, Bea.
The reason that I wanted to talk to you in particular is because I think that our audience would be interested in knowing about the different ways that elected officials can advocate, in this case for animals. Everyone knows that senators introduce bills, they sponsor and co-sponsor bills, and they vote on bills. But there are a number of other important ways that they can advocate for positions that they care about. So I wonder if we could talk about some of those. And the first one is the floor speech, both in connection with a vote on a measure or just in general. So could you talk about that, please?
Yes, absolutely. So, as someone who has been in the minority party for the time that I've been a senator, which is almost 4 years, there's not a lot you can do on the offensive because you don't control the schedule, you don't control which bills get committee hearings, you don't control floor votes. So one thing that a legislator can do, and I have done quite a few times about many topics, including animals, is to give a fiery floor speech. We're lucky in the Michigan Senate that in a statement, a section in the schedule called statements, we are allowed to get up and speak about anything. And if it's related to a topic, like a resolution or a bill, we can also get up during a period called discussion. So for example, whenever a wolf hunt resolution comes before the Michigan Senate,
which it has a time or two.
It has, they pretty much know that during discussion, I'm going to get up and I'm going to explain why I think my colleagues should vote no on the resolution. And I ask them at the end of the speech to vote no. So that's one thing we can do, and I have done. And so floor speeches are very powerful tools, especially for the party in the minority, since you don't have a lot of power to do much else.
Do you ever do that? In other words, if you had a constituent who was a member of an animal group and they made it known to you that there was a particular issue of importance, and you agreed with it, is that something you would encourage your constituents to do, and maybe it would find its way into a floor speech?
It's possible. I like to space out the floor speeches because it tends to be that I hate to say this, but I have to run and get my computer cord, Bea. That's a problem with Facebook Live because they just told me that my computer is going to die. So bear with me for 1 minute. Hang on.
That's fine. And while we're waiting for that, I'll remind people this isn't the first time on Lunch and Legislation that we have had technical problems, but this seems to be easily solved. We're going to be talking about a couple of the other techniques that elected officials can use. I thought it was very interesting to hear just now her talking about how it's actually written into the rules or into the agenda that there can be floor speech. And here you are back again. Okay.
Yep. So yes, so I always like to hear what constituents say. I'm thinking of one example that just came to mind. Lots of constituents in Livonia 2 winters ago were very upset about this trio of beagles that was left outside and in not so great conditions. And I ended up making a bill out of that. So, I saw it on Facebook, people contacted me. And so we ended up creating a bill that would require animals to be brought into some enclosure that has heat if the temperature reaches X number of degrees. Unfortunately, that hasn't received a hearing, but that's one instance where, a groundswell of constituent, outcry really moved me to do something.
So, speaking of beagles, this is a good segue.
Yeah.
Another way that our elected officials can advocate for issues they care about is going to events. And we're going to talk about two specific events, and they're really different. But the first one has to do with the beagles. And I understand that within the past month or so, you were at a celebration, actually, at the Humane Society of Huron Valley. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was invited by the Humane Society of Michigan to go visit some of the 4,000 beagles rescued from the horrible breeding facility in Virginia. And so I did. I had just come from the horse barn. I was dressed in my horse barn clothes and my boots and and I happened to take a video, a short, maybe 30-second video of the beagles, of the Attorney General, Dayna Nessel, who was there, of my partner in all things animal legislation, Representative Matt Kolazar, who was there. And I just put it on Facebook. I didn't know what to think. That was maybe 3 weeks ago. It's almost at 1 million views on Facebook. 1 million views.
Unbelievable.
People from all over the world are contacting about this. I just basically said, these are lucky dogs. They were on their way to labs to be experimented on and euthanized, and they picked beagles because they're docile, friendly, and forgiving. And that, combined with the video, really touched a lot of people's heartstrings. And so what I connected it to was Teddy's Law here in Michigan, which also hasn't passed. And it's a law that said if any animal is experimented on, which that's a whole other story, okay? But any animal which is experimented on has to be euthanized after that in Michigan. Having never seen the grass or had a life of anything, they don't even have names, they have tattoos. And isn't that a crying shame, So Teddy's Law is something that, my God, we have to pass. So every time I posted about that visit we had to Huron Valley, I posted about Teddy's Law. So hopefully that's also going to produce a groundswell of support.
Well, we hope so. We've talked about that several times on this series, and Attorneys for Animals always has an action item to call the representative who chairs the committee that
Right.
it's languishing in.
That is so important. Guys, let me tell you, that phone call saying, hey, why aren't you bringing Teddy's Law up for a hearing, is so important. And look to be for which committee it's in and when to call and what to say.
Okay, so the second type of event was a very different event. It was at the end of March, and it was at Wayne State. And can you talk about that?
So another thing that we can do is, like regular people, we can go to protests. The thing that's good is when we go to protests, sometimes the news shows up and we get to talk, So I went to it was by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, put on a protest outside of Wayne State University near the entrance where these dogs, I believe they're beagles, are brought in to unwillingly participate in a 30-year heart experiment that hasn't produced what I don't think any meaningful results for humans. It's killed 150 dogs or more, but so we did that. The news did show up. It got on local news. It got some amplification. And then the best thing about it was my colleague Matt Kolazar asked for an attorney general opinion about the humane treatment of animals in experimental situations. And she did an opinion, her and her team, she issued an opinion that says, you know, she was surprised to see that there were no standards for what is humane treatment of animals. There were supposed to be a long time ago, but it never happened. So now these facilities are required to report rigorously on a bunch of different factors. And so this was a huge deal, this attorney general opinion. And so, you know, that was really big, really big. And we don't have any power. Yeah, you were there, B.
Yep. They're in the process. So there was a law in the 1970s or 80s,
Right.
a long time ago. And it required the agency that's now the Department of Health and Human Services to do two things. They had to register every facility in the state that does experiments on animals. And as part of that, the facility has to agree to certain humane standards,
Right.
which the department is supposed to adopt. Well, that decades later, nothing's been done.
It didn't happen, right.
And they are now in the process of forming an advisory committee. So again, the devil's in the details, but I'm sure you and Rep. Kolazar will be paying attention to see as these humane standards are developed, but it is huge. It is huge.
It's huge. And I tell you, Dayna Nessel, she's such a big supporter of animals, the humane treatment of animals. She has cats. She has, gosh, I don't know if I'm saying too much, but she has a cat that, my gosh, a lot of people would have abandoned. It's incontinent. I think it's blind. So, you know, she just gives that cat such a good life. And it's just, you can tell it's just in her heart, you know, that the humane treatment of animals is something that's important to her. And, you know, she and her legal staff took a look at statute and determined that it wasn't being followed. So I don't know if another attorney general would have taken the time to do that, but she did.
The other thing that I recall, and I don't know what the follow-up has been, when you and Representative Kolazar were at that Wayne State protest, the two of you sent a letter to the Federal National Institute of Health, because they are the agency that year after year after year continues to fund this research that, as you said, has produced nothing substantive for humans.
Yeah, it was a disappointing response.
Okay.
Without remembering all the details of the letter, the return letter I got back, it wasn't. Well, I mean, I will keep trying.
But it's still an avenue that,
Absolutely,
as an elected official,
letter writing, right?
And that's what's important. So one other thing, we're about at the end of our time. So I'll ask you first if you have anything else on these related topics.
I think if I was to say one thing that your viewers can do, Teddy's Law is super, super hot right now. And I know we're in an election year, you know, and the balance of power after November 8 could completely change. So the majority party now that really isn't that interested in giving it a hearing may flip to a different majority party who has members who are interested in giving it a hearing. So a lot's going to happen between now and in November. I would say if the legislature does flip, there'll be a much better chance. It's just, yeah, there will be. I think I can say that with confidence that Teddy's Law would get more attention. So keep an eye on the election and what happens. And, you know, if it does flip, or even if it doesn't, your viewers should follow your lead, get to the head of the committee and request that it be given a hearing, and mention the 4,000 beagles. You know, mention that you know, it's such a hot topic right now, and it's really bringing attention to the fact that this is a tragedy for these animals. You know, I'm not saying it's just, they have to be treated humanely, and then they have to be able to be adopted. I don't want to get into the whole animal experimentation thing because there's such a wide variety of it. I try to not use products that are tested on animals myself personally. So, and I don't eat meat, haven't eaten meat for 25 years for animal reasons. So, you know, there's that, but I would say Teddy's Law would be something that if you want to do something while it's hot now.
Okay, thank you. We have provided, and I'll put some notes in too as to how you can contact the representative who kind of holds the
and the bill sponsor in the House is Representative Kevin Hertel. And he's a good one to promote as the bill sponsor for that.
Okay. And I did just want to mention before we leave, if you look at the little graphic for today's lunch and legislation, normally I put in a picture of, if we have an elected official as our guest, I put in their formal picture from their website. But with Senator Polehanki, there was a nice picture of her and a horse. And so we'll go out on a positive.
And I do have a horse. He's a rescue horse named Oliver. That's not the horse, but I've had a horse, and he's living a good, nice life in retirement.
That's good. So we'll go out on that positive.
Okay.
And I wanted to thank you very much for joining us, and to all the viewers.
Thank you, Bea, for all you do at Attorneys for Animals. Whenever you come to testify in the Michigan Senate, I'm so heartened and I love it. And please continue to follow Bea, because she really has her finger on the pulse of how laws and bills are made and the key players in Lansing. She's the real deal.
Oh, well, thank you. And I appreciate it again.